Welcome to Unlocked, the home of common sense that speaks Britain's language with me, Martin Daubney.
And me, Belinda DeLucy.
Ben, you've lost some hair and some, and some curves since we last met. Anyway, on the day that we learned the sad news that the British national treasure, Barbara Windsor, was passed away, we decided to make today a carry-on tribute edition of Unlocked. Let's face it, Brexit has been the ultimate carry-on. But now, 4.5 tortuous years on since we voted to leave, will the 17.4 million finally get the clean break of our dreams, or will Brussels make us take it up the Khyber? At the top of the show, we have King of the Brexiteers, John Redwood. In fact, he was sticking it to the EU when they were still making carry-on films. Next, we have our very own matron, Anne Widdecombe. Carry on, and we'll be carry on fishing with June Mummery. Brendan O'Neill, the editor of Spiked Online, will be carry on triggering Remainers. And finally, the People's Champion, June Slater, will be carrying on regardless. Just try and stop her. But first of all, early today, Ben and myself did a cracking interview with John Redwood, who is in fine fettle. So let's watch now what John had to say. So John Redwood, welcome to Unlock. So you've got to be in a pretty good mood today. Boris Johnson has said today that no deal is now looking very, very likely. What's your intel from inside Westminster, John?
There's great resolve, as I thought there would be and hoped there would be. Too many times British governments have rolled over in the face of EU intransigence or in the face of EU provocative briefing. The only government that didn't was led by Margaret Thatcher, and now we have another one. And Boris Johnson has been true to his word. The cabinet is fully behind him, and he is sticking to our true position, which is we'd like a deal if it's a free trade deal which enhanced our departure from the EU, but we don't want any old deal because quite a lot of deals are worse than simply leaving. If a deal entails accepting their laws, accepting their court, accepting their instructions, then it has to be no deal.
And how does that play out, John, with the agreement that we've already signed, you know, the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Irish Protocol? You know, where does Northern Ireland now sit in the United Kingdom? If we, in particular, if we were to leave the transition period without a deal, without a free trade agreement?
Well, you're right, there's still issues there, and we were trying to get to grips with those in the House of Commons this week. We are awaiting the detailed text. We've heard from Michael Gove, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, that he has some kind of high-level deal, ways in which he thinks that we can organise trade into and out of Northern Ireland, both from the mainland Great Britain and from the Republic of Ireland. But there were a number of questions I and others raised for which there were no answers. So I think this is work in progress. We wish them well. We want them to negotiate a settlement. I and others did not think the EU withdrawal legislation contains the right answer. And there were a lot of fuzzy bits in it that needed to be clarified in the subsequent negotiations. That was why I encouraged my friend Bill Cash to draft his excellent sovereignty clause, which was a necessary part of us accepting the withdrawal agreement, because that gives us the opportunity to make changes to the arrangements unilaterally if there's no good faith by the EU, if there isn't a sensible solution for Northern Ireland. The government has started to do that with clauses that were widely objected to on the continent. The government has, for the time being, withdrawn those on the grounds it now has a solution. We want to see the solution. If there is a solution, that's great. If there isn't an agreed solution, we need to revisit this.
But Michael Gove made a number of declarations, didn't he, in the House a couple of days ago, which included obviously a withdrawal of the clauses, I think it's 44 to 48 of the Internal Market Bill now that they're no longer required. But I think he did confirm that there would still be EU state aid law active in Northern Ireland, that there would now be an office of the European Union in Northern Ireland adjudicating whether goods can come in from Great Britain or not. And a number of other things which, you know, raise a few eyebrows from perhaps the purer side of the Brexit debate. And I just wondered whether you think those declarations that he made are consistent with Article 38 of the Withdrawal Agreement Act, or whether you think there's some, some sort of contradiction there, which is going to need further resolution in the future?
I think we need more detail, because I can't tell you in honesty today whether these are offensive intrusions on our sovereignty or whether it's a sensible way through a difficult issue for Northern Ireland and therefore for the rest of the United Kingdom. And that's where we've asked for text and detail, and I think they are still negotiating it. I suspect what happened was that they got a high-level agreement on these difficult issues ahead of the Prime Minister going to his famous dinner with the European Union Commission President, because they wanted to clear as much ground as possible to give it the best possible shot for finding a wider overarching agreement. And I can understand them wishing to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a permanent fix in the context of no deal. So that's why I and others are withholding our position, awaiting the detail, and think that the Chancellor of the Duchy is going to have to go back to the EU to sort out what it does mean, because we certainly don't wish to see enforcement officers directly controlling events in Northern Ireland, for example.
Okay, so John, I'd now like to move on to your excellent blog, your diary, which you put out every day. You focus in your most recent one on Project Fear, some of the more ludicrous Remainer claims of doom that never came to pass. What are the highlights for you, John, of the most preposterous claims that have been made by Remainers over the years?
Well, I think the most serious claims, which backfired in the referendum itself, were the false economic forecasts. And these often had the names of great institutions, including the Treasury, on them. And they said in terms that after we had voted no, we didn't have to wait for us to leave, just the act of voting no, we would see a big fall off in employment. No, we didn't. We had continuous great job creation right through from the vote until COVID hit 4 years later. They said that we would see a collapse in house prices. Instead, we saw a little bit of continuous growth in cash house prices throughout the 4.5-year period that has now elapsed, time wasting on trying to get out. They said there would be a hit to our national output and income, and instead our national output and income continued to rise from the vote right through until, again, the COVID disaster hit, which is obviously nothing to do with Brexit. And the one they say, well, maybe we got this right, was the sterling one. And they said, well, sterling was going to fall. It's quite true. A few days after the vote, sterling did go down. But it's also true that the sterling dollar rate, which fell immediately after the vote, had recovered to its starting position by 2018. So I think they even need to do some homework on their sterling forecast. And I think they too readily assume Brexit bad. And any day sterling goes down, they say, oh, that's because people are worried about Brexit. Anytime sterling goes up, they say, that's because people don't think there's going to be a so-called hard Brexit. Quite often, it's nothing to do with Brexit. Sterling goes up and down because the dollar goes up and down, and the main driver of currency movements in the world is what is happening to the dollar, of course. So yes, really bad forecasts. And I put that out again today because we've got another set of project scares coming out of the EU about all the ways they think they can disrupt the borders. I just don't buy it. I think they're rattled, I think they're worried, but they are governed by world trade rules, so they can't mess up the borders under the world trade rules, and they always tell us they obey the rules. That would be great. But they would also have enormous pressure from all their exporters, because it's mainly an import trade into Britain. They sell us a lot more than we sell them. And I don't think all those exporters on the continent will want their market messed up by nonsense at the Calais border or whatever.
Well, I think that it's really interesting, actually, seeing some of the no-deal provisions now coming out of Europe. We were told that aeroplanes would cease to fly. Well, they volunteered up air slots. We were told that trucks wouldn't be able to make it across the channel, and they volunteered that up. But I thought what was rather cheeky, and I'd love your view on this, is that they should continue to fish in our waters for a year. And that seems to me Mr. Macron wanting to have his cake and eat it.
Well, no, it's wanting to have our cake and eat it.
Our cake, sorry, that's right, our cake.
Well, I'm all in favour of having my cake and eating it. Indeed, the only reason I ever buy cake is because I want to eat it. So I'm
well said,
with the
well
Prime
said.
Minister with that. But I don't believe in taking other people's cake unless they've offered it to me for fair exchange. For years, we've had our fish taken, usually against our will. British governments normally kicked up a bit of a fuss and then gave in the normal British way of handling the EU. At last, we got a government which says to the EU, we're out of here, And that means we have our own fish, and we will decide who fishes it, how much we take out, and what we do with it. And I see huge opportunities, as I think I've told your audiences before, to rebuild our fishing fleet and our fishing industry, and then to build lots of on-land businesses on the back of it, because quite a lot of that fish can be processed, turned into great meals, frozen for longer shelf life or whatever. So we've got this huge opportunity for a fish processing and food manufacturing industry on the back of it. And I hope some of those free ports, which the government has promised us, will be fishing free ports, and that they build this food industry alongside.
So John, as a lifelong Eurosceptic and a driving force of the Brexit movement from the very, very beginning, if we get this joyous, clean break from Brussels, what will that mean to you?
Well, enormous amount, because I love and believe in my country, our country, that I think it can achieve so much more. And I've watched in horror over the years as industry after industry has been damaged by regulation or undercut by subsidized competition or affected by silly rules. And when I was our single market minister, at the point where we were hyperactive because they were completing, as they then said, something called the single market. And of course, they weren't completing a market at all. What they were doing was they were putting through an enormous set of law codes to power grab and micromanage everything that was going on in our private sector and the private sectors on the continent. And so often the starting point was a draft text based on the business interests of the leading French or German companies, which is where they'd taken a lot of their advice from. And we, the UK, had to start from behind, arguing for a mixed system or a freer system or no regulation at all. And so many wasted hours trying to persuade the EU not to legislate or trying to get it to have permissive legislation, because they were nearly always wanting very precise control, so that the winners were some big companies within the EU.
Superb. Now, John, we'd like to present you, if we could, with a token of our gratitude for the 17.4 million. We have an award for you here. So John Redwood, we would like to make you the Unlocked Brexiteer of the Year. This is a lifetime achievement award for you, sir. Now, I just want to say thank you from all of us for your tremendous fight. Now, I know as a parliamentarian, you're not allowed to accept gifts, are you? So
no, I'm not.
Would you mind
if I did, the Remain lot would be on to me like a ton of bricks.
would you mind, Sir John, if we drank this?
No, be my guest.
There you go.
I suspect Martin made that public declaration to ensure we drank it.
Exactly. But seriously,
we'll say no. But it's the thought that counts, and I'm very sorry. Thank you very much.
We will send you a nice Christmas card, but the intent is from the heart. You know, we sincerely want to thank you for all you've done. I know for yourself in Westminster, it's often been a lonely wicket, but you've always stood by your guns, and you know we're all very, very grateful for that.
Very.
So I just want to
thank you. Well, I'd love to receive the words. That would be gift enough.
Well, thank you very much, Sir John Redwood. It's always a pleasure and never a chore, and we're hoping for a clean break Christmas miracle. Thank you for appearing today on Unlocked.
At last.
Thank you.
It's got to be said, if Carry On did champagne, it would certainly look like this. And it hasn't gone unnoticed. You may be surprised to know that this is a slightly comedic bottle. Sorry, Anne Widdecombe, I hope this doesn't get into the swear box. But look, moving on, Ben. It is looking like Bar Humbug Ben Habib may have called this wrong. Maybe your keep calm and carry on being pessimistic was the wrong approach. Is humble pie going to be on the menu for you this Christmas?
Well, I'd be delighted to eat humble pie. I mean, I think if we get a no-deal Brexit at the end of this year, we've made a huge step forward. I'll mix up a massive amount of humility in my Maggi mix, and I'll bake the pie, and we can eat it together. Because you've had a few suspicions too, I think, Martin, haven't you?
Yeah, I think my approach was I was always trying to be slightly healthily pessimistic, because I just didn't want myself to get too excited. Yeah. I think that's my natural kind of safety card to lay down. I think it served as well. But what do you make of what Sir John was saying there? Because I know you're a little bit sceptical about Northern Ireland in particular, aren't you?
Well, I think, you know, if the Prime Minister really believed in a clean break Brexit. He would never have signed the withdrawal agreement. I'm foxed by his preparedness to sign it after he'd won that thumping majority. I get why he championed it during the election. He had to beat the drum to get elected. But once he got his majority, he had a month and a half window to ditch that wretched agreement. And that agreement isn't just bad as far as Northern Ireland is concerned. It ties us into a whole host of other hassles, which we're going to have to extricate ourselves from, and not so easily. You know, we did see in September the Prime Minister recognizing the problems with the Northern Irish Protocol, trying to bring legislation through Parliament to unpick some of its worst bits, and being nobbled both by his own MPs and then in the House of Lords. And now a couple of days ago, in a sense, ignominiously ditching those clauses. So, you know, what the Prime Minister was calling is critically important for Northern Ireland last week, he's now suddenly ditched this week. Yeah. And so I remain quite skeptical, I'm afraid. I'd be very happy to eat humble pie, but, you know, we've been here before. We've had fantastic rhetoric from Theresa May and, you know, throughout from Boris Johnson, but I'll believe it when that pie is in the oven and it's getting oven ready.
Yeah, yeah. And that is something I want to put to everybody on tonight's show, all of our guests. How optimistic are you? Is this going to be another stitch up, or are we finally going to get the Brexit dream? And I want to ask all of tonight's guests and everybody watching now live on the Daily Express Facebook page on Unlocked, how will you celebrate if a clean break Brexit comes through? Because I remember when we won the referendum, I went jogging around my school, my son's boys' playground. It was a running morning and I was floating on air. The teachers were weeping. They were actually weeping because they were all Remainers. And I'm afraid their Remainer tears made it that bit sweeter. Now then, we're getting some great comments on Facebook already, particularly around Northern Ireland. It's a real hotspot for Brexiteers. Manish Sharma Banot is saying Northern Ireland is part of the UK, not the European Union. It's that simple. This is a deal breaker. I want to move on now to Anne Widdecombe. Anne, a committed Eurosceptic, probably for even longer than John Redwood. How are you feeling at the moment about Boris is saying a no deal is very, very likely? Is this more Christmas pantomime, or are we finally, Anne Widdecombe, going to get the dream?
No, my message at the moment is calm down. We're hearing an awful lot of hype. We're hearing an awful lot of gloom and doom from the point of view of those who want a deal, and a lot of hope from the point of view of those of us who don't. But we've still got till Sunday, and if I had to put money on it, I would bet on a fudged deal. I don't think we're going to get a good deal. I don't think we're going to get no deal. I think we're going to get a fudged deal. So I'm very sorry if that's depressing, but that is how I see us heading. I just don't believe, if he really believed that we weren't going to get a deal, he'd have walked by now, because the issues remaining are so big that they are not going to be solved in 3 or 4 days without massive fudging. So what's he still there for if there's really a blockage on these 3 big issues?
So you're saying this is pure pantomime at Christmas?
I'm saying it's a combination of brinkmanship, theatrics, it's all those things, but I don't believe for one moment that the inevitable outcome is no deal. I wish I did. I wish I did.
And Anne, if we do get a no deal, how important in that process do you think the Brexit Party has been?
Oh, if we get a no deal, the Brexit Party's been instrumental. I mean, it was, after all, the Brexit Party who, by the magnificent victory in the European elections in 2019, actually sent a very, very clear message to the government that people wanted to get Brexit done, that they were fed up with the democratic mandate being ignored. We then, of course, had the general election, in which, if the Brexit Party had not stood down in those Conservative seats, some of them might well have been lost. Boris wouldn't have had his huge majority, and his ability, whether he'll use it or not, I don't know, but his ability to get a no deal. And crucially, of course, we drew off votes from the Labour Party in very, very crucial seats, which the Conservatives have never won before, but won because we drew off the votes. So our contribution to Brexit in general is, I don't think it can be overstated, and I think it's rather churlish of Boris that he's never made that point.
Yeah, and there's a load of comments coming in straight away on Facebook. Bob Dickinson is saying, I've always greatly liked and respected Mr. Redwood. Alan Lingwood is saying, clean break Brexit is what we all want and what we voted for. And Anne, a year ago this week, I was knocking on doors across Ashfield. A lot of us were campaigning in a general election campaign. It rained for a month. It was horrendous, but we were told everywhere in no uncertain terms, we want to get out. Let's get on with this. Anybody but Corbyn, ABC, but we've got to get this job done. Nobody was talking about a deal. They were talking about a clean break. And I think that's what we can't forget. People want that, Anne, but you're not quite as pessimistic as Ben Habib, but you're getting there.
Oh, I'm pretty pessimistic about the prospect of a clean break. I really am. And even if we do get the clean break with the trade deal, we've got all the baggage of the withdrawal agreement, the political agreement, and all the rest of it. So I think there's still a lot of baggage to be overcome, but no deal on Sunday would be a huge step towards a genuinely independent future for Britain.
Now then, Anne, before I ask you how you intend to celebrate, I want to have a little bit of fun, because I've mentioned before on this show that we kept a swear box, didn't we, on the Brexit Party WhatsApp group. Yes. And the other day, Anne, you gave us our end of year tallies, and yes, it was great fun. And Anne, who was the most potty mouthed of all the MEPs?
Well, he's sitting not very far from you, and his name is Ben Habib.
Oh, and you better take legal advice. You better take legal advice.
By streets, he was winning the profane stakes. He really was.
Yeah, and I actually have the data at my fingertips here. Ben contributed a massive £86. And you should have seen actually his reaction when he found out he'd won. I think you doubled down on that, Ben Habib. And you know what? The funny thing was, I sat next to Ben Habib in Parliament, and the very, very first day when Guy Verhofstadt wobbled in and started talking, and here's a guy who's experienced and benefited from some of the finest education in the land, was swearing like a sailor on shore leave, and I thought, here's a guy I can get on with.
This is pure slander, everyone. This isn't true. I've never uttered an expletive in my life.
Well, this is a family show, the Daily Express, so don't get taken off there. So, yeah, you were in first place, 86 quid. A surprise entry, Claire Fox, £29. She didn't realise that bloody was a swear word.
And... Oh, stop it. Stop it.
Sorry. Oh, God. So, oops, I'm doubling down.
I thought you said this was a family show.
Yeah, sorry. John Tennant equals second on £29. I thought that was shockingly low. I thought John would come in much higher than that. Christina on £23 surprise entry. I always thought she was
well, lovely Christina.
Yeah, lovely.
She's a bit of a telltale though, isn't she?
June Mummery somehow got away with 22 quid. That's got to be a jury's inquiry. That's got to be a steward's inquiry. You know, June Mummery can go. And I was down on 4 quid. 4 quid. The former editor of Loaded magazine only swore twice. And do you know why, June? Do you know why, Anne? Because you kept me in check, because I respect you and I didn't want to upset you. Yeah, there we go. So look, let's move swiftly onwards. I want to talk now, if we can, to Brendan O'Neill. Second time on Unlocked. We're greatly chuffed to have you on. A free speech warrior, editor of Spiked Online, of course. You've been championing this for absolutely ages. Brendan, we're hearing about the rhetoric of being very, very close to a clean break. You're well connected. What are you hearing out there? What's the intel?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I agree with Anne. I do think we have to be a bit calm. We shouldn't run ahead of ourselves. We shouldn't get overexcited. I mean, I would love a clean break. I think a clean break is absolutely what we need. But it's unclear whether the government has got the bottle to do that. That's what's not clear at the moment. But, you know, what's been proven over the past few weeks and also over the past few years is that a clean break is absolutely essential, because I've come to the conclusion that the European Union is insane. I mean, I always knew it was illiberal. I always knew it was undemocratic. I always knew it was authoritarian. I always knew it had all those problems, but it's also completely and utterly mad. I mean, the demands they're making of Britain are really quite deranged. You know, they want access to our waters. They want to keep us beholden to laws that the European Union hasn't even written yet. They want to send commissars essentially to Northern Ireland, which is a part of the United Kingdom. What they're doing, they're treating Britain as if it were the defeated party in a war. And they are trying to humiliate us and trying to make us accept a really low-grade deal in a really low-grade situation. But of course, what we have to keep saying is that we were the victors in this war. We voted democratically to leave the European Union. And if that isn't respected, if that isn't upheld, then I think Boris Johnson and his government could be in serious trouble.
Well, Brendan, if a clean break does come through, how big do you think the temper tantrum might be?
Oh, it's going to be off the charts. I mean, it's going to be the temper tantrum to end all temper tantrums. For the past 4 years, my working life has basically been listening to people having temper tantrums. Every time I'm on the media, every time I do a public debate, I'm being screamed at, very often by posh women, it must be said. You know, people complain about mansplaining. I've suffered from women-splaining for the past 4 years. Remainers kind of screaming in my face and telling me Brexit's the worst thing that's ever happened, and the people who voted for it are ignorant and didn't know what they were doing, and it will cause mayhem in this country. I mean, the temper tantrum over the past 4 years has been bad enough. I think if there is a no deal situation, the temper tantrum will just be really, really scary. And that's one thing I'm kind of relishing to a certain extent, because I think the more out of control Remainers become, the more vindictive the European Union becomes, the more people will see what's really at stake here. And what's at stake here is that it's a conflict between over the question of whether ordinary British people should govern the destiny of this nation, or whether so-called experts and foreign technocrats should govern the destiny of this nation. That's really what's at stake here. And I think the more temper tantrums those people have, the more clear it becomes to the vast majority of the public that they're really being done over by people who think they are superior to them.
But if we get this massive temper tantrum, where do you think, Brendan, that leaves the Conservative Party? You know, the Conservative Parliamentary Party has at least 136 Remain voting MPs still sitting. How do you think that plays out for the 80-seat majority that the Prime Minister has, and what's held in store for him in 2021?
Well, the thing is, I think Boris is probably walking a bit of a tightrope at the moment, because he does need to keep on board, you know, the wets in his party, the kind of Remainers in his party, or the soft Brexiteers. But far more importantly than that, in my view, he's got to keep on board all the new voters who voted for the Tory party in 2019, which includes vast numbers of former Labour voters in red wall areas who voted for the Tory party for one very clear reason, which is that the Tory party promised to get Brexit done, promised to give people back control. So what Boris needs to do, and I'm not convinced that he's capable of doing this, but what he needs to do is sit down and think very seriously about who he owes a greater allegiance to. Does he owe a greater allegiance to the woke people who seem to be taking over Downing Street and the kind of moaning MPs who are constantly telling him to compromise? Or does he owe a greater allegiance to the millions of people who actually were quite brave in shifting away from their habit of voting for the Labour Party, and for the first time in their lives, in many cases, voted for the Conservative Party? If he's got any brain cells left, and I'm sure he has, he will recognise that it's far more important for this government to be honourable towards the British electorate rather than caving into the demands of wet people in the Conservative Party or the European Union itself.
Yeah, you know, you're dead right. And I want to pick up on that point of being bellowed at by Remainers. I've been on 2 big appearances this week on the Jeremy Vine show today, 3 against 1. Once again, you know, the final countdown of Brexit, I'm literally the only leaver. I was on the Adam Bolton podcast this week with their political editor, John Craig. And honestly, it was like being a bucket of fish between two seals. I was getting barked at in both ears. I had to say to them, can you please stop shouting at me? I actually said, can you just stop shouting at me? The mainstream media, as I called them, and they took great offense of that. I said, look, the further this has gone on, the further you just cannot contain your Remain bias. And I think you're dead right, Brendan. The more it's gone on, the more naked in plain sight it's been. And I want to ask you this. Can the British mainstream media be fixed? Or is it just done for now? And is the future standalone platforms like your brilliant work at Spite and what we're trying to do at Unlocked, is the future just to break away from the mainstream media? Because we don't get a fair hearing, do we?
Absolutely not. And I think a lot of people are looking for new media outlets which they consider to be more honest or fairer or willing to give time to people who are Eurosceptical, who believe in freedom of speech, who believe in democracy. People are looking for outlets that carry those kinds of views. And I think the media bias against Brexit has just been extraordinary. I mean, particularly on the BBC. The BBC became, the Brexit bashing corporation for the past 4 years. And even when they weren't openly promoting Project Fear and all these horror stories that would apparently unfold if Brexit became a reality, even when they weren't doing that, some of them can't even say the word Brexit without dry heaving. I mean, they really think this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And I think one thing that I've realized in the kind of media work I've done over the past 4 years on this issue, I'm afraid to say that I think there's a strong element of class snobbery and sometimes even class hatred in some of this stuff, because a lot of these moaning Remainers in the kind of liberal media, they really cannot get their heads around the fact that the woman who cleans their lovely apartment in West London had the same power as them on referendum day to decide the future of this country. And that really is the thing that sticks in their craw. They are horrified by the idea that people who didn't go to university, people who live in red wall areas, people who might be manual laborers or have other kinds of jobs that they are not familiar with, they can't believe that these people carry the same weight as them when it comes to deciding whether we should be a member of the European Union or not. And that's why they've spent the past 4 years raging against the low information public, the stupid public, these Northerners and Welsh people who didn't know what they were voting for. There is a very clear strain of class disdain in some of this. And I think a lot of people now look at the media and think to themselves, why do you hate us? Why do you talk down to us so much? Why do you treat us in this way? And that's why we're seeing people asking whether it's right that we all have to pay the TV license. That's why people are turning off from Sky News. And that's why people are looking for other outlets. They want media outlets that take them as viewers seriously rather than treating them with contempt.
It's absolutely correct. And there is this real feeling we don't ever seem to have shaken off through centuries of Britishness. And that is this feeling of the peasants are revolting. And we had that with Brexit. We saw it on every doorstep. People were telling me that across Ashfield and the West Midlands back in May and June last year when we won the European elections, that why do these people hate us? Brendan, please stick around. That was excellent as ever. It's an absolute pleasure having you on this show. You're great thing. You've got a brain like a chess player, mate. Love you. Great comments flying in on Facebook straight away. This one you're going to like. Burnsy John and his pictures of Poppy. Whenever you see a Poppy, you know you're in for a treat with their comment. Burnsy John, Kleenex are working overtime to keep the Remainers in hankies. Do you remember that nice picture of Kleenex Remainer size that did the rounds? I think that's going to be going around it. I know we shouldn't be doing this. I know we should be above this, Ben.
Well, we've got a couple of weeks of fun ahead of us, I think, haven't we?
I think it's a fair trade for being called a Nazi for 4 years, to be fair. I think it's a fair trade just to have a bit of fun. Loads more comments coming in. Now, if you're watching, please can you share with your friends on Facebook, follow us at Unlocked United Kingdom on Facebook, on Twitter and YouTube. We are at Unlocked_UK_. And don't forget, keep sending your comments. How are you going to celebrate if we get a clean break? I want to move on now to one of my favourite all-time people, let alone my favourite MEP, June Mummery. June, nobody, I believe, has got more skin in the game than you in this. You run a fish market, you're friends with fishermen, the stories you've been telling. There's a beautiful story you told this week of Max, a 19-year-old skipper who's just got his first fishing boat going. And he was talking so passionately about a clean break. And Brendan was just saying then about this massive disconnect between ordinary people and the media classes. And you have been a lifeline of connecting those communities. We had fishermen on the show last time. Shane was in with us. And I want to talk to you obviously about fishing. It's still a huge part of these negotiations. Where do you think we are with this? And if we do get back 100% control of our fishing waters, June Mummery, what will that mean to you and the British fishermen?
Well, you know, I really do agree with Brendan. I always put it like this. I always think they think they're the kings and queens and we're the sorry people. And how I tend to feel sometimes is this. So I'm in the Roman times in the arena, and I'm there and I'm thinking, will I live or will I die? Is it a thumb up this week or the thumb down? Did Boris get his dinner cooked last night? Yes, right, I'm in. That's how I feel most days. I'm feeling super excited about Sunday. I truly believe that Boris would be absolutely foolish to get us that close to the wire and backtrack. I mean, he's put lots out there today. He's out there grinning and laughing about it. You know, sometimes I listen to Boris, and I think, Boris, are you taking this seriously? You know, I've been just watching The Crown, the series The Crown, and I've just watched the last one. And, do you know, I watched that from the beginning. You know, I sort of couldn't stop watching it. And the respect that this country had and the way that people were treated and how leaders performed, whatever has happened to our country. You know, I suggest these Remainers and these people who really have lost their way, in fact, these people who have actually fell out of love with our country, should sit back, get an episode of Netflix. You can get that free for a month, I think, and sit back and watch that series, because that puts in perspective what our country was all about. And it's beautiful. Right, Sunday, we take back full control. But have we taken back full control? We've got access to our waters, but we've still got the problem that flagships, which is a British registered boat, but is owned by foreign interests, have still holding 54% of the quota. So my job won't be over until I see all that fish, all that resource returned to our country, because we still won't be able to rebuild the UK fishing communities until that happens. Now, there's two ways that can happen. A strong, honest government will address that situation and say to the Dutch and the Spanish who own these flagships, okay, you can keep your quota, but you have to be domiciled in this country. So that means they have to live here, send the kids to school, and one big thing, pay tax. Because at the moment, this has been going on for years and years and years. Our government hasn't looked at it, and none of this money has gone into the Treasury. So what this will mean to coastal communities once we take back that is they'll start to rebuild, Martin. You agree? I mean, that'll take a few years. I think within a year, you know, if we make these flagships start to land their fish here, that we can then kick this process and start that up. You know, we can start that in Lowestoft, and I know somewhere that's ripe for that is Fleetwood. They've lost their fishing industry, but they've got a huge, Grimsby and Fleetwood have still got a massive processing plant. So that's the start of it. And gradually, you'll get more people want to come into the game. You'll look at grants. They'll be able to go to their bank manager and say, look, Mr. Bank Manager, we've took back full control. And they'll be able to borrow money off the back of us having that fish back. So that's what I see, Martin. I see great times ahead.
Yeah, I share your optimism. I really do. I mean, if we could bottle you and pump you through the kind of air conditioning system at Westminster, we might have a fighting chance of actually doing something for our coastal communities. I want to get a couple of Facebook comments in. You're going to like this one, Ben. This one says, Ben for number 10. That can catch on. That's from Paul on Facebook. I want to cut back, if I can, to Anne Widdecombe and Brendan O'Neill before we carry on to you, June. A really interesting development. Imran Ahmed Khan MP has put out a very provocative tweet reacting to the fact that Angela Merkel has refused a telephone call with Boris Johnson. And he says here, I stand with millions of Britons that are deeply insulted at this shocking news. This is an insult to every Briton, whether they support our Prime Minister or not. Anne Widdecombe, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that's perfectly fair summary. But why should we be surprised? The EU has been insulting us for a very, very long time. It has refused to take our departure seriously, refused to recognise our sovereignty, has openly laughed at us all the way through the May negotiations, and I admit they were a bit risible, but nevertheless the EU has insulted us right from the start. So I don't know why anybody would be surprised at the latest manifestation.
But does such shoddy treatment drive us nearer to a clean break?
It may be indicative that that is how the EU is now thinking, and that it's thinking, well, maybe a clean break is inevitable, and therefore, it's all right to behave in this way. It's difficult to imagine that if there was a really crunch thing that could be solved in a telephone call, that they wouldn't be willing.
Brendan O'Neill, carry on with today's carry on theme. The Germans, Frau Merkel, they don't like an oven, do they?
They don't. I think it's outrageous how Britain is being treated at the moment. And one of the problems, I really agree with June, that there are lots of people in this country, in the Remainer elites, not the 16.1 million people who voted Remain, but in the Remainer elites, there are lots of people who loathe this country. And you've really seen that with the way in which they are siding with Merkel for refusing to take Boris Johnson's call. They're siding with the European Union as it seeks to punish the UK. Orwell wrote about these kinds of people in the 1930s. He wrote about these kind of upper middle class socialist types who loathe their own country and prefer European values, European culture, and that's how they express their contempt for the country they live in and its traditions and its people. We're seeing a repeat of that now, and the way in which the EU is treating the UK is bad enough in itself, and that's one very good reason for Boris to walk away. But the way in which certain sections of our media and political classes are cheering the EU on as it treats us in this fashion, that's the thing that's incredibly worrying. And that's the thing that won't be fixed once this is finally sorted. That will go on for a long time.
And June, if we get this miracle clean break at the end of this year and we get our waters back, of course, from a practical perspective, we won't be rid of the EU member states fishing. We might find illegal presence of boats in our waters. How do you think the government's going to handle that one?
If they do that, they'll become pirates. So our government will have to deal with piracy. They will stick their chests out. But at the end of the day, they'll try it once. I mean, let's look at Iceland's situation. I mean, Iceland soon realised that the UK were making money off the back of their fish, and they told us to leave. In fact, I did find out that they actually did offer us some fish, and we said no, we don't want it. We'd carry on, and look what happened. As soon as we tried to battle in and barge in, they fought back, and that's what we will have to do. France has really got a big problem. The whole of the industry, the free lunch is over for the EU fishing industry. They're now going to have to cut their cloth accordingly, decommission their ships like we had to, and start fishing in their own waters. I mean, they'll have their own problems over there because they'll all be they'll all be against each other. That'd be a war on water on itself to me. But no, we have to stand firm, and that will be piracy, and we have got that. We have got detection. You've got satellites to know where people are. That's all there. That's just that being brave enough to tackle it. And my goodness, would we? is Boris not even ready for that? I mean, he's certainly not ready to sell the fish, but surely he's ready to protect his country. I mean, come on, there's lots of mistakes the gentleman has made, but to protect your country and the people is paramount.
Yeah, well, I think there'd be no finer captain of the ship going full speed, ramming speed ahead than you, June Mummery. I can see you jumping aboard a foreign vessel with a knife between your teeth. And I must confess, I wouldn't welcome that fate upon any French fisherman.
No, I wouldn't.
That would scare the bejesus out of them on the high seas. Alex, my director here, has written in massive red letters on the board, arrest them for plunder. I mean, we are having serious emotions about this because, look, still to this day, that the Remainers and the European Union refuse to accept the importance of fishing. And how many times, June, we said over but it's only 0.1% of the GDP, without realizing that's because it was decimated in 1973. And if it was rebuilt, and I saw you said on Newsnight this week about the lack of preparedness.
Well, that's what really gets me. You know, one of the things that really gets me down is the lack of preparedness of this government, the lack of vision, the lack of enthusiasm to take back control of our waters, to regenerate the 186, that's nearly a third of the country, 186 coastal communities. You know, they just lack this vision. And, you know, without wishing to go back over ground covered by Anne, that's what makes me slightly suspicious about their determination for a clean break, because if they were heading in that direction, they would have thought about all these issues, and they'd actually, frankly, I'd have gunships ready to see the French off. I wouldn't deal with it with satellites, and I wouldn't put June in danger. I'd have our gunships out there dealing with the French.
Well, that was going to get them going on the Daily Express. Ben Habib has deployed the Navy, and they're going in all guns blazing. I think Robert Rowland said similar.
He said something about the Belgrano.
He mentioned we shouldn't mention the General Belgrano, but he did mention that in the European Union, in Strasbourg, in Chamber, as I recall. What hijinks we had. I mean, we just irritated those people to death, and that was our job. Talking of which, let's move on to our final guest now. Here's somebody, June Slater. She's a real queen of the North. You've been on Facebook as an activist since the very, very beginning, June. You've become a real people's champion. And I think it's been an absolute tribute to you, you know, to give people that voice. I know you read hundreds and hundreds of emails, you respond to all of them. You've dedicated so much time to the Brexit cause at grassroots level. We want to thank you for that work today. I can't give you this because you're not here, but there will be hopefully a slightly less carry-on bottle wing its way towards you soon, June Slater. But June, you've heard what all of our parliamentarians have to say. You've certainly heard a lot about what Boris Johnson has had to say, and also tonight's guest. But what I want to get from you, June, is what are people really saying out there on Facebook, on the grassroots? What's their reaction? Do they believe Boris, or is this yet more Boris bluster?
Well, just to show you my kind of contact with the public, and the reason I think my page has grown to 120,000 followers is since I started blogging, which was just off my own bat, frightened myself to death setting a post to public one night, and I saw it had got shared 1,000 times. And I thought, oh, good God, who's that? Who's looking at my page? In the last 4 years, I won't say since I started blogging, but in the last 4 years, I've responded to 150 messages a day, which totals up to 219,000 messages. The thing that's unique about this is these people are all Brexit people. They all voted to leave the European Union, mostly. Some are converted Remainers, actually, reasonable ones, not the elite that Brendan talked about, but normal people who voted just for the easiest route to stay in. And then with all the publicity that we've been afforded about the EU, they found things out and turned to just want Brexit. So there's a lot of intel there, and it's like a rolling survey. So I think there's much more information there than a YouGov poll that does a cross-section of society, because a cross-section of society is going to get the Remainers as well, and people who aren't political. But with these people, I think the thing that the government is completely missing, and this is what's coming through in messages, those people all have the same thing on their mind. It's what Brendan said. We are sick of being talked down to, like our opinion, decision and vote is worth less somehow. Let me tell you, there are people like Norman Fox, who's a retired engineer. There's Barbara Hugh Lawrence, who's worked in the medical profession. These are people who have since retired. There are other people, young people who are quite active, who are concerned about Brexit, concerned about the country, know an awful lot about politics, more than me, because they've studied it longer. I've only come in at the deep end, as it were, since Brexit. These people are very well versed in what it means to be in the European Union, because they remember it when they first went in. What the media, what the mainstream media and the politicians and the London bubble do not get, it has not sunk through the machinery. And that is, there's an alternative source, and it's each other. So for instance, when Kay Burley comes on and Adam Bolton comes on and tells us that Nissan's going to show, what happens is my message box fills up with people who work at the Nissan plant saying they're not going to shut June, they're actually enrolling apprentices at the moment. So I ring them up and find out that they're enrolling apprentices. Sure enough, it's true. When they come on the mainstream media and tell us that we're going to have trouble at the ports, we're not going to be able to get food and medical supplies, I get people who work at those ports who are a bit naffed off about that because they're doing their job to the best of their ability and they're already preparing to stockpile stuff. I get telephone calls and messages from truck drivers. They're the beating heart of this country. They're the ones that have told me that we are taking 4 times the amount of medical supplies in through Belgium. It comes from America. And if we didn't have the EU, we'd get it cheaper, thanks to Donald Trump, who's taking on the cartels. But this medical supply route comes from Belgium because they have to take their cut before it gets to us. But we are 4 times the regular amount. One driver's words were truck after truck after truck is rolling off the ferries with medical supplies. They don't tell, I'm pointing down there because that's where my telly is. They don't tell you that on the telly. They don't tell you that at all. And where I think it's immoral, it's not just not right, it's immoral. There are people who don't have access to people like me. So I end up, when I'm going up to Co-op these days under a sodding mask, trying to tell people, little old ladies doing the shopping, what's really going on and not to be afraid about things, because we are basically fed fear. Fear, fear, fear. And anybody who voted for Brexit has had that perpetually now for nearly 5 years, and it's not on. It's not, because there was the build-up before the vote, don't forget, about how we didn't know what we voted for. Of course we knew what we voted for. We knew we were the fifth strongest economy in the world. We knew we had the greatest global reach of any single member state. We knew that they needed us more than them because we spend more money with them. What does a business do if it's got a good customer? What does a business do? You think to yourself, I've been in business. I had one customer that gave me a lot of business. What did I do? I greased round him and made sure he got everything he needed and made sure he got it on time. And if we couldn't deliver it, I went out in my car and I delivered it because I wanted him to want me. I didn't want him to find someone else. And that's the position we're in with the European Union. The European Union need us. They need us. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We ski down their slopes. We sit on their beaches. We buy their cars. We buy their cheese. We buy their wine. We learn their languages a bit. They buy all their own stuff. You drive down a motorway in France, it's all Renaults and Peugeots. You drive down Germany, it's all VWs, it's Audis, it's BMW, it's Mercedes-Benz. You drive through Italy, some clapped out stuff that they have. I don't know what they drive in Spain, but it certainly isn't. It isn't much Spanish stuff. The thing is that the European Union, we, the great British people, are the biggest spenders in Europe. We spend more. We have more credit card debt. They want access to us. People who do trade deals with the European Union do trade deals because they want access to the British market. That's a lot of the reason that countries have done trade deals with them. And we're treated like this. And the biggest anger at the moment, the biggest anger is to see our leader go cap in hand and have to face a woman who got in on a ticket of one. For those who don't know what a ticket of one is, it's one choice, like Kim Jong-un in North Korea. You don't get another choice. She wasn't elected. She was appointed. And she now, this woman, who's basically bulged up the defence in Germany, who Martin Schulz, you want to read some stuff in German papers, what Martin Schulz has written about Ursula von der Leyen. It's insulting. She got a battleship, a 1958 battleship, to do it up. Guess what? She spent 10 times the budget on it, and it still isn't working. And we've got her, this woman, positioned to tell us, a great nation like Britain, how we should trade in the future, how we should fish. And I can tell you now, you can forget thinking that there's only fishermen and coastal communities bothered about fishing. Most people in this country are in an absolute uproar. And the reason I'm popular is I'm a feisty sod, and I get on Facebook and I tell it like it is, and I am saying what they're thinking. I am saying that.
You're absolutely dead right. In fact, Facebook is just lighting up now on the Daily Express. And I was really interested there to see Brendan O'Neill's reaction to you. Because when Brendan was on the show last time, he was really listening to the fishermen. And Brendan was really listening to you. Because it's refreshing, Brendan, just to get real people who actually know what they're talking about, rather than these tin pot experts who are paid up by think tanks and tucked up by government money. And they're getting euros in their back pockets. June Slater, listen to me, messages. June, you're going to blush now, but tough. Julie Ingram, be our voice, June. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Big up, June. Jennifer Miller, June Slater, good lass.
Jennifer.
Joe Tisdall, I love June. Facebook goes mad for June. Paul Baker, June Slater, the mother of Great Britain. I think he's been at the gin. There's another one. Manish, who's back for more. Manish, June Slater, very famous, but still keeping it real. June Dodd. You write these comments yourself, June. June Dodd, a very intelligent lady is June, and obviously a very successful businesswoman, but her heart is definitely with the working class and the supermarket lorry drivers. They are salt of the earth. June, you're getting more and more fans when you come on Unlock, so please keep coming on. If you watch our Facebook page and if you follow us on Twitter, you will see Wake Up Britain. It's a 2-minute missive from June most days. We try. I'd like to do them every day, June. They're absolutely excellent. Got a little bit of breaking news here. I want to cut back. A minute ago, I was implying, forgive me, Ben, for implying that Ben was being some kind of extremist on the high seas. No. The Guardian is just announcing the Royal Navy has said 4 Navy ships will be sent in to help protect fishing waters in case of no deal Brexit. Ben, the Guardian agree with you. I think we need to go home.
And that's absolutely right. And I said in an article in the Daily Telegraph a couple of days ago, for which I was absolutely lambasted by Remainers, that the British people would get behind no deal. Yeah. And if we see French coming into our French and Danish and Dutch and whatever coming into our waters to steal our fish, and we have to challenge them, the British people will get behind no deal 100%.
Yeah, and you know what, June Mummery, 4 ships is not many. You know, we've got a lot of coastal waters, but just the emotional and the factual offer of support from the Navy. How does that make you feel, June?
Well, it makes me feel absolutely delighted. You know, listening to June Slater there, I get the same type of messages sent to me. Don't underestimate the great British public. They have been... they've just been superb to me. I always get a bit choked up when I talk about them all, because sometimes I've really wanted to throw the towel in. There's been days I thought, I just can't do this for another week. That goes on and on and on. And all of a sudden, a wonderful little tweet will come, or a Facebook message, or a handwritten notelet through the post. The dear little notelets we all used to use will come through to my office. And that gives me that strength to move forward. So good old Royal Navy. Good on you, boys. And yeah, I think that's great. That is why I think we're heading in the right direction.
You know, and June, I'll never ever forget that day when we all gathered Brexit policy MEPs and we discussed how we were going to vote. And you know, I've said it before, June, and I'll say it to you again. I really got emotional for your position more than anybody else's, because I know what it meant to you to vote for this. You held your nose and you went for this deal in the hope and the prayer that they'd actually grow a pair of these.
Yes.
And they would actually stick up for the fishing industry and send in the Navy. The mood music is good. We've got a long way to go yet. Now, what I want to do now is quickly go around all of our guests and just dream, dare to dream. The clean break drops on your Christmas mat. Anne Widdecombe, how are you going to celebrate?
I think I'm going to put Union Jacks all up with my Christmas decorations.
Well, it's hard to say fairer than that. It's hard to say fairer than that. In fact, this Union Jack I have here was the one I had on my desk and in Parliament in Strasbourg and Brussels. You know, even doing this irritates Remainers. So look, this is just for you. This is just for you, because I know you can't stand us waving our little flags. Well, look, that's for you, lads, ladies. Get lost. We won. Sorry, that's uncouth. Let's go to Brendan O'Neill. Brendan, the clean break is delivered to you, freshly wrapped for Christmas. How are you going to celebrate, Captain?
I'll get drunk. I will be incredibly happy. But I think whatever I might do, I think we need a public celebration.
Yeah.
We need a celebration of the restoration of democracy in this country. And listening to June Slater there, I was really, it really brought home to me the argument we've all been making, essentially, which is the importance of democracy. And the importance of democracy is that it is a check on the elites and their tendency towards groupthink, their tendency towards feeling jaundiced about life and politics, and their tendency towards protecting themselves rather than thinking about what's good for society at large. This is the wonder of democracy. The wonder of democracy is that it galvanizes the wisdom of the crowd and uses that to keep a check on the elites who often do stupid things. So that needs a public celebration. So if there's a clean break, I think we need a celebration as big as the celebration in January when we left the European Union, when we all headed down to Parliament Square and had a big party. We need something like that to celebrate the fact that this is a wonderful thing, and it is putting the British people back in their rightful place as the people who decide the destiny of this nation.
I absolutely agree with that, Brendan. And the BBC will probably on a different street filming a few people complaining with their Remain megaphones, won't they? Do you remember on January 31st, they're in the wrong bloody street. They weren't even filming Parliament Square where all the action was. Well, there's only a few hundred here. Oh, around the corner, lads. There's about 50,000 around the bleeding corner. Anyway, Ben.
And June Mummery, what will the mood be like in the coastal communities? How are you all going to celebrate if you get that magic clean break? Because you're the ones who are going to be immediately benefited by it.
Well, I'm like Brendan. I really would like to organise something, you know, whether it was in London or somewhere where I can thank all the people that have supported me. And, you know, last week I went out on or the week before, was it last week? I can't remember, on a song. But I heard a song the other day. So I was born in the 60s and I can remember this song. I don't know whether you all can. And I listened to that and I got a bit of a tear in my eye because I'm very sentimental at the moment. I'm a little bit, you know, I'm waiting for things. I'm tired of it all. But can you all remember, I'd like to teach the world to sing and furnish it with love, grow apple trees and honey. I heard that and I just felt, why can't we all be like that? So I want a party with all those supporters. I'd like to see some Remainers. I think there are some Remainers that have come my way. They don't like it, but they love us really. And like Brendan said, I'd love a great party. I want to see all my Brexit people, friends, Twitter, Facebook, and give them all a big hug with a mask, and if I'm allowed, or 2 metre, one of these. But that's what I want to see.
Isn't that wonderful? You know, June Mummery, the teeth of a shark and the voice of an angel.
That was actually very dulcet.
And that was getting me emotional. June Slater, the final word of how to celebrate is going to go to you. I can see you guffawing away in the background there, punching the air. What's the celebration going to look like at Chateau Slater?
I'll probably go out with my dogs and Dave, and we'll take a flask, Yorkshire tea, of course, and I'll buy some fresh crab from Fleetwood, which I always do. Make some really nice sandwiches like my mother used to make when we were flush. We were always skint, so we ate jam butties and we had sort of bacon and tinned tomatoes and stuff like that. But when she was flush, she'd go to the market and buy some fresh crab, and you had to queue for it, and it was all caught in our waters, and that's what we want to see. Fresh crab sandwiches, sat on a hill somewhere, looking at the British countryside, thinking, yes, it's ours.
Yeah, that's a tremendous sort of way to finish the show. And Alex, our director again, he's the guy a minute ago who said, let's arrest the French fishermen for plundering our seas, has now written, Unlocked will host the biggest celebration party of them all. Mate, that's a big offer to make. You better dip your hand in your pocket. But look, anyway, we're feeling very, very happy here. But look, cautiously Optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic.
Not quite bar humbug, Ben Habib,
No.
but let's be cautiously optimistic. It's been a wonderful show tonight. You know, I think we're allowed to feel optimistic. We're allowed to enjoy the moment, but we don't want to be disappointed, Boris. We don't want to have this pleasure ripped from our arms. You've heard what the people have said tonight. You've heard the voice of the people from June Slater. You've heard how the media has been decimated from Brendan. We know Anne Widdecombe has been champion from the start. And as far as the fishing communities go, nothing short of total control will be seen as an acceptable Brexit. And everybody on Facebook is echoing all of this. And I sincerely believe that Unlocked has become the genuine voice of Brexiteers on the media. As I said, we were so tired of getting just pilloried, lambasted and barked at in both ears by entitled liberal metropolitan Remainers who went to better schools than me.
You don't enjoy that?
I actually do enjoy it.
Yeah, and I'm going to miss it when it ends.
Yeah, we shout at each other.
We shout at each other.
We get a few Remainers and they won't even come to our party. But look, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all of our guests. And we really have been battling since the very, very beginning. We're not going to stop. I'm hoping this is the last episode of Brexit Unlocked. We'll be carrying with our other content. But if it's not, we're going to keep on going till the bitter end. We were there from the beginning and we'll be there until the very end to ensure that you get the Brexit that you deserve. We're doing this for you. 17.4 million. That's why we got into politics. We were mad enough to back the Brexit side. An easy life would have been to go Remain. We didn't want an easy life. No. We wanted to get Brexit done. Thank you for watching Unlocked. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please tune in next time. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.